Hi everyone, welcome back to the next recap in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, Songbird in the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. This is the most recent release in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. It's the first book in the Shadowborn duet. If you're not familiar with the Crowns of Nyaxia series, strange that you're watching this video, but I'm so excited to have you. It is a series that spans this broader world. I think in total it's supposed to be like 6 main books, and then there's definitely some spin-off books. But it's organized into a series of duets that are like focused on different couples because it is a romantasy series. So this duet is finishing up with, I don't remember the name. I never remember the name. I really should look it up. But that one is coming out in just a few weeks here. So we're doing a little recap to get our brains refreshed and ready to go. This is following the story of Mische and Asar. I'm pretty sure. It'd be weird if they introduced a second love interest, like in the second book. They were like, just kidding, forget everything you know about Asar. Here's a new guy in town. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's about Mische and Asar. Definitely about Mische because it's from her perspective. And their shenanigans. And they are in the Shadowborn kingdom. We have in Obatros, which is like the larger continent, I would say, country. There are 3 groups of vampires. The Nightborn, which was our first duet, which followed Rain and Orea. And then we have the Shadowborn, which is following these guys. And then we also have the Bloodborn. So exciting. The Shadowborn vampires, as we'll kind of discuss in just a minute here, have like mental manipulation powers. And they also don't have wings. The Nightborn vampires had wings. These guys, unfortunately, no wings. So this is obviously a recap. I've read this book now twice, once through just like enjoying and reading it, and then the second time through for notes. But if you want my like initial first reactions, I did put them over on Patreon. That was like our book of the month for July. Patreon is new. It's going to have 2 pieces. There are kind of like 2 main levels that you can join on Patreon. And the first one is just like the book club, which is going to be a monthly book club. This month we read Songbird in the Heart of Stone. Next month there's a poll to help us pick what book we're going to read for August, and that is going to have like a weekly kind of like discussion, chatty posts as I go through initial first impressions. It'll just be a way for us to kind of read stuff together. And then the middle tier is called the Recap Society, and that one includes the book club, but also adds in the additional element of a reread. Right now we are rereading the From Blood and Ash series, and so every Monday I'm posting a video recapping, much faster, much more casual than these like formal recaps, also much shorter, like I think like an hour and a half total per book-ish, instead of like 3 or 4 hours per book, 5, 6, 7. I don't know how many hours Kingdom of Ash wound up being. So much shorter, no visuals, like much more casual, but like a recap in case you, 1, want to read along with me, or 2, don't want to reread the entire series but want to be ready. We're doing this one because the last book in the From Blood and Ash series is coming out at the end of September. And so we're reading a book a week until then. Okay, perfect. That's the update. I will have it linked down below. It's a great way to support me and what I'm doing over here if you enjoy it, or if you want a little bit more extra content from me. Now let's jump into the recap. Like structured with like a lot of little sections, we get these like interludes, and this one is a prologue, but it's the same sort of structure at the beginning of every part of this novel. And this novel is broken up into like, I think 7 parts that are like flashbacks into Mische's life. They're told in this like kind of almost like story-esque structure, in which we're just like learning a little bit more about Mische and her life as particularly a priestess of the sun, which is something we knew from those first 2 books. We like knew Mische had a connection to the sun god. We are learning a lot more about it in this book. I love the first prologue, so I'm going to actually read you the introduction. This is the tale of how a chosen one falls. Like most legends, it is unremarkable at its start. There was nothing special about the girl when the sun god chose her. He had his pick. He was among the most revered of the gods among his mortal followers. Every dawn and every sundown saw countless offerings upon his altars, food and silks and riches and soft bodies, every mortal pleasure a god could desire. He was particular with his favor. He chose for himself only the most flawless faces, the most powerful warriors, the most skilled sorcerers. The girl was none of those things. The 2 sisters arrived at the temple with nothing else in the world but each other. If they did not find shelter here, they would be cast back out to die, like countless other faceless innocents. It always begins like this. In times of great darkness, humans crawl to light like flies to the gleaming silver of spider's silk. These are the souls that the gods feasted upon. No one loves you more than someone who has no one else. I love that intro. I think Carissa was cooking on that introduction. No one loves you like someone who has no one else. This story like really beautifully explores, we'll kind of see it unfold with Mische, this relationship that is such an abuse of power from Atraxis and the ways in which he like manipulates Mische. I think we saw more, if you were with me in my last recap where I did Slay the Vampire Conqueror, which is a book in this world, but not necessarily like in the specific series we're in. It's kind of confusing. It's like a spin-off. I think we were supposed to have read it before we get to the next book, but if you were with me with that one, that book really explores like cult dynamics and the dynamics of like sisterhood and community and how those can be manipulated. This is more specifically focused on a little bit of that, but more so on the like abuse of power within a relationship that is romantic-ish. At least maybe not romantic in like the classic sense, but romantic in the sense that it is like an intimate interpersonal relationship. And I think it is done so beautifully, and I just like think that is like the thesis right there. Like, no one loves you more than someone who has no one else. When someone has like no option but to turn to you, then like, yeah, of course they're gonna love you because they have no choice but to. We really unpack that, what love should look like, and it shouldn't look like that. So we get the story of Mische and her sister arriving at the temple for Atraxis. Mische is only 8 years old. She's just a little baby. Her sister is older. I think she's a teen. And they arrive, and Atraxis sees Mische on that very first day they arrive at the temple, and Mische has brought the gift of a feather. They both bring gifts from their like homeland to like as like offerings to Atraxis, and Mische has brought this gift of a feather that reminds her of her homeland, and he sees her offering this, and he says to her, "I see you, little one, reach out your hand." And he immediately like gives her magic. He gives her the ability to light the candles on the altar. She has this like fire magic from the sun god. And then this is how this interlude ends. The sun god thought he had received another devoted acolyte that day. Even he could not describe what he found so charming about the child, but what did it matter? She would be another chosen to add to his collection, happy to receive his attention when it suited him and easy to put aside when it didn't. She would follow him until the end of it all, just as the others had. He was right, for a time. But such a boring story that would be. This is the tale of how a chosen falls. She does it screaming, clawing for her old life with broken fingernails. She does it slowly over the course of decades, and in the end, she takes the whole forsaken world with her. Okay? I do feel like Carissa in general like cooks in these like little prologues. I'm such a fan. They're like one of my favorite parts of her stories. I think Serpent and the Wings of Night has a similar one about like Vincent. So good. Anyway, we start with part 1, which is called Life. And we find Mische, and she is in a cell. Last we saw Mische, she was actually leaving the Nightborn Kingdom. She told Rain and Aurea, they were like, "Hey girl, we love you." She's besties with Rain. And she was like, they were like, "Hey girl, we love you. You can hang out here for as long as you want. We'd love to have you like at our house. Like, please stay with us." And she's like, "No, I gotta travel. I got stuff to do." And that stuff is to kind of like work through her trauma, pretty much. So we meet Mische. She's in a cell trying to light a candle, but she like cannot access her magic. And it's been this way for like a little bit here, where she's not been able to access her magic. And typically this happens. Like, normally the gods of the White Pantheon abandon their like magic users as soon as they get turned into vampires, because the gods of the White Pantheon are kind of in opposition to Nyaxia, who is like the god of the vampires. She's still trying to call Atraxis though, see if he'll help her out, but it's been more than a year since she's felt his warmth, and each attempt, instead of actually lighting a candle like she hoped they would, just opens burns on her skin. And we learn that she's in jail in the Shadowborn kingdom because she killed a prince from the House of Shadows. We did see this in the last book. She was turned by a prince from the House of Shadows, and when that prince arrived at the like Nightborn castle, she saw him and murdered him. And we're not mad about it. I think we will get a little bit more as we get later into the story about like what actually happened there, but it seemed as this like very traumatic event. And then this prince had left Mische to essentially die after he turned her. She was trying to be sneaky as she worked through the Shadowborn kingdoms, but they caught her, and she has like a stack of unopened letters from Rain and Aurea. She knows that they've been writing her and like telling her to come home. They like miss her, they love her, they want Mische with them, but she just like knows she can't do it. But she does wish she would have read the letters. She's like, now I'm going to die here, and I wish I would have read the letters. Also, maybe not carried them with me, because now this doesn't look great for Rain and Aurea. A man and a woman come to the door of her cell, and the woman uses her Shadowborn magic to compel her to rise. So essentially they have like the magic of compulsion as part of like their Shadowborn gift, so they can get in your mind and one, like rifle through things, but also like force you to do things. And we learned that this is the Princess Ygritte. So there were like 2 children of the Shadowborn king, Ygritte and Malik. Malik is the one that Mische killed, and then Ygritte is the one here. And she says to Mische, so this is the one who killed my brother. What an embarrassment. A prince of the House of Shadow murdered by some little girl he turned. He never could control his own impulses. That's what happens when you spend your whole life getting everything you want, I suppose. And Mische tries to like deny it, be like, actually, I don't know who murdered your brother, but wasn't me. Sorry about that. Sorry that happened to you. But the girl's like, we don't have time for this. And she just like rifles through Mische's brain to figure out like what happened, to look for the memories, until she finds the day where Mische kills her brother, and she like sees it, and she like wants to know exactly what happened. And Ygritte doesn't like seem that upset about her brother's death. We know that in the vampire world here in Albatross, things are pretty ruthless, because in order to rule a kingdom, you have to like kill the current heir. And because vampires are like essentially immortal, there's like a lot of murdering that happens, especially within like ruling families, because there is this like grasp for power via murdering. Ygritte thinks that Mische is like a spy for the House of Night, that she's been like sent here to spy on them, even though like I'm sure she didn't really find evidence of that in her brain, but that doesn't seem to bother her. But she has these letters from Rain and Aurea. Obviously she's like close to them, and so like could very much convey information back to Rain and Aurea. And she is like, Mische, I don't think she calls her right name, but she is planning to give Mische as a gift to someone. Mische has been like set up to be a gift. And then we learn about Mische's sister, Seisha. We have Mische and Seisha. So Seisha is Mische's sister, and Mische kind of remembers, we get a lot of memories of her sister in this, but she remembers her sister like telling her stories about vampires when they were kids, and like how they used to like scare her, but she hadn't like, I've never even seen one. And she's thinking about that as she like loses track of the days in the dark. She's just like stuck in this dark cell, and she doesn't even know how long she's been down here. Someone comes down to her cell and winds up like healing her, because she was like pretty badly like beaten up by the guys that came up before. But she doesn't know who it is. She's like, okay. And she's like so out of it that she like can't really ask questions. Then she starts to have these like weird dreams in which she has other visitors coming to her cell, and these people are like making her walk around, and they're like changing her outfits, and it's like very like dream like everything that's going on, but she's like being compelled to do these things. And then she wakes up. It turns out they like kept her in this like dream state using their shadow magic, and just compelled her around. Now she is dressed in a ball gown in the middle of a very crowded ballroom. Time for Mische to be presented as this gift, and Ygritte is planning to give Mische as a birthday gift to her father, the king. She's like, hey dad, I'm bringing you the murder of your son as a birthday present. You're welcome. Very thoughtful. The king immediately, like, obviously is not like her biggest fan, because she did murder his son. We learn that the king's name is Raoul, and he is the king of the House of Shadow, and he's the oldest vampire king, and has been like the oldest for a while, which is like pretty impressive, because that means he's held on to power for a long time. And we're kind of told that he relies more on spies than on warriors. Like, of course he has warriors, but they have managed to like he's managed to maintain control by like really trading in a lot of information. His wife is right next to him, and she's got just as cranky of a face as her husband. They're both not excited that Mische's here. I mean, they're excited about the present, I think, but like mad at Mische. King Raoul says, the House of Night, the kingdom of crows and bats, sends spies to me. Neculai hasn't earned such nerve. And Mische's confused, because Neculai hasn't been the king for like ages. Like, currently Rain is the king, but before that Vincent was the king, and it's been like decades since there was a king that was Neculai. Ygritte tries to like cover for him, be like, ugh, well, what do you mean? But it doesn't work. Like, it's pretty clear almost immediately that Raoul is suffering from some sort of like dementia, in which he's like forgetting things and is just like not fully in his head. Because immediately after that, the king asks for Malik, the son that Mische killed. Like, he doesn't even remember that his son is dead. And then there is this like overwhelming pain that like radiates out into the ballroom. Everyone is like crouched over, clutching their head. There's some humans that are in the room that are there to like be drank for the vampires, and they are like have blood bubbling out of their mouths. I don't know if they make it, but like the king, in his like distress over like being confused about his son and being told his son was not alive, has like made everyone in pain. You know, a la Jane from Twilight. His wife like gives him a cup of wine and is like, could you not do that? And that like calms him down. Everything is like better, and Ygritte once again tries to present her gift. My gift to you is more than just retribution, father. Yes, she murdered Moloch, but we know that she didn't act alone in that. Execute her for her crimes and send pieces of her back to the House of Night. Show the slave king and his half-breed queen what we think of their treachery. And Mische's like, I don't think you even need to bother doing that because they like literally don't even care about me. They're like, they would be like, okay, whatever, we don't even care. And she's just like trying to keep Rain and Ray out of this. And the king commands her to kneel, and he says, let us show the House of Night what we do with murderers. And someone is like holding Misha's head. Someone's got a sword to her throat. Like she's about to get her head chopped off. Misha's crying because she's like sure she's going to die in this moment. But then a voice from the back of the room shouts, stop, I need her. So like I mentioned, Raoul had two legitimate children, Ygritte and Malik, but there was rumors of a third bastard child that was in charge of the king's spies. And we assume that this man that's just strolling into the room is that guy. And then he says to his family, a dead prisoner is useless. Killing her now would be a stupid mistake. And the king is like, why are you even here? Nobody invited you. And Asar is like, maybe I've come because a son should attend his father's birthday celebration. And Ygritte is like, better move that carpet, Elias. It's been a couple of centuries since he's left his cage. I don't believe he's housebroken. Elias is that man that was with the girl at the very beginning. He is the like royal guard. He's like Ygritte's head guard man. And the king is like, enough. Say your piece, Asar. I'm getting tired. I'm getting thirsty, and neither is doing much for my patient. And as soon as the name Asar comes out, Mische is like, oh, I know this man, because Asar is known as the Wraith warden. He's like, we'll learn in charge of this like magical prison, and he's like notorious for being like in charge of the spies and like, you know, all the dirty work of the kingdom. Asar gets in her head and actually helps her like break free from the Shadowborn magic that was like holding her in this kneeling position so she can stand up. And Mische notes that he like might have been handsome once, but now he's completely covered in scars. There's like scars that are vying all over his body, including like through his left eye. So his left eye is like cloudy. He reaches for her and like pushes up her sleeve and shows off her scars. So she has scars all over her arms from all these attempts to use Atraxis's magic. All that sun god magic burned her. And he doesn't care about the scars in this moment. He's actually looking at her tattoo. She has a tattoo of a phoenix, which is the order of the Destined Dawned, which is like Atraxis's cult of followers. Mische remembers when she got it, her sister teased her about it because it looks more like a firefinch than a phoenix. Like it looks like a much smaller bird. And Asar says to his family, there are far more useful things we can do with the Dawn Drinker than butcher her up. And Ygritte is like, okay, but like we should still kill her. And Asar is like, no, because I need Atraxis's magic for my task. And Ygritte is like, she doesn't even have any of his magic left. All the white pantheon gods abandon people when they get turned. Like she's not still got that sun magic. And Asar is like, I need her. I have a task from the Dark Mother. And Ygritte is like, no, she is literally going to be useless to you. And Asar asks Mische, are you able to wield the magic of Atraxis? And Mische realizes this is her last chance to live. If she cannot produce some magic right now for this boy, she is going to die. They're going to cut her head off. And she's like, yeah, for sure, I still have the magic. And she starts praying so hard. She's like, Atraxis, please, if you're ever going to come and help me, now is the moment. And she's able to like make one little flame and hold it in her palm. And Asar is like, perfect. The underworld will be punishment enough for her. And Misha's like, wait, hold on. What's your task? You're taking me to the underworld? Hold on. Maybe I actually just want to get my head chopped off. Ygritte slips into her mind and says, like, mentally to her, so foolish. You could have had a clean death. Instead, you volunteered yourself for something far worse. Asar just like picks her up and walks her out of the party. Mische like keeps summoning sparks as they're like walking. They're like leaving the palace for the first time. Delighted to have this magic back. She's been missing it for like over a year now, and to like finally have it back feels like so great, even though it is like burning her. Even though it doesn't actually feel that great. He takes her outside and she gets to see like the oceans and the foliage of the House of Shadows, like the first time she's been outside in like quite a while. And Mische starts to ask questions about like what this mission, what this task is, and why he needs her, and he doesn't answer. And then Mische's like, thank you, by the way. And Asar's like, I did not do you a favor. And then he's like, why do you keep doing these finger sparks? Like, what's the deal with that? But we learn that they're going to Morthrin. They're going to Morthrin, a prison created by the gods, and it's like cursed. It is similar to the like moon palace that they used in the Kajari, and that it is this like sacred-ish place for the vampires, but this place that is like endowed with like a ton of like magical properties. And Mische tries to use her sun magic to like fight Asar. She's like, actually, if I have my magic back, maybe I can fight this man. If she has sun magic back, she can like burn vampires because the sun burns vampires. With me. But it doesn't work. A voice inside her head is like, no. Not yet. This voice that comes from like Atraxis. And then Asar looks at her as she like, because I think she like does like spark some flames, and he's like, that was a waste of time. And then he uses his shadow magic to knock her up. Editing Michelle here. He uses his shadow powers to knock her out. Like knock her unconscious, not knock her up. Those are very different things. She is not pregnant. She is not with child. Mische dreams of her sister and spending a night in the desert with her as the sun rises. But because this is like a dream, a nightmare actually, as the sun rises, it burns Mische up. She's a vampire in this dream. But when she actually comes to, she wakes up in Morthrin in like complete darkness. And she hears Atraxis' voice, wait for me. And then she sees a dog with a skull face come out. This is the love of my life, the absolute star of this book. This is Luce. Luce is a dog, dog, and I do picture him to look like, I'm sure you're seeing it. I haven't made the slides yet, but I'm sure you're seeing it. I picture him to look like a dog from Coco, like a Day of the Dead, colorful skeleton dog. And I love her with my whole heart. Oh, she's so precious and adorable. She comes to fetch her. Luce comes to fetch Mische and lead her through the hallways that are like these like beautiful like celestial hallways. The descriptions of the locations in this book are like so incredible. This otherworldly location, but these hallways are almost described as like celestial. It's like she's walking through like stars and like moons and blood. They're like beautiful and scary. It's like a combination of both. They finally reach this room that's covered in roses, but it is a study. It's like a library type situation, and it's covered with all these like artifacts. And our besties from 6 Scorched Roses would have probably loved it. And Mische's like impressed by the collection, and she's looking particularly at the sword that clearly belonged to Nyaxia that's hanging on the wall when Asar walks in, and he's like shirtless and covered in blood. And Mische is staring at his shirtless body and apologizes when he catches her, and he's like, I've long since stopped being sensitive about being stared at. And he's like, Luce, why did you bring her early? And Luce is like, girl, this was on time. She doesn't say that, obviously. Luce can like mentally talk a little bit, but like not that much. We're at like Scooby-Doo levels of talking, but like mentally. Luce was right on time, obviously. What's his face? Asar just lost track of time. And then Asar starts just like reciting Mische's history back to her using like her full government name, Mische Ilia, and how she joined the Order of the Destined Dawn at 8, and then at 19 went to Obatros as a crusader, where she was then turned by his brother Malik. And then after that, she met Rain, and then did the whole Kajari thing that we saw in the last book. And Mische corrects them and is like, I didn't go to Obatros as a crusader, I went as a priestess, as a missionary. And then Asar points out some skulls that he has sitting on his shelf, and he's like, those skulls were left by some vampires after the missionaries were done with them. Like the missionaries from the Order of the Destined Dawn that went to the vampires were there to like destroy them, because like the vampires and the sun are like enemies. You get it? But the one thing I can't figure out is like the fire, and like how you've been able to like maintain your fire magic as a vampire. And Mische says, I am an acolyte of Atraxis. You knew that already. And Asar says, sure. But it's interesting that you say am and not was. Countless acolytes of other gods have been turned over the years, and the gods of the White Pantheon have abandoned them all for it, but not for you, even if it appears that you've had to sacrifice to keep those gifts. And Mische's like, well, just special, what can you say? And he walks around his desk and then grabs her shoulder and does some like shadow magic and like explodes his shadows onto her and like does something to her. And then he explains that he like has put an anchor in her, which essentially is to like make sure they won't get separated on their journey, so they can like feel each other. And Mische realizes then in that moment, like feeling his magic work on her, that he was the one who had come to her cell to heal her. And she asks him about it, and he says, I didn't want you to die. You're too useful. And Mische was like, I didn't know that Shadowborn magic could be used to heal. And Asar says, all forms of magic are just tools. And then he's like, come with me, I need your help. He shows her to this like necromancy setup. She immediately like recognizes it. And she's a little horrified, but also like a little interested. Necromancy is like quite dangerous and like completely forbidden by like everyone in the Shadowborn and Nightborn worlds, and probably Bloodborne. She's also kind of impressed because like it's hard magic to do. And Mische's like, hey, I did think this was forbidden. And Asar is like, and forbidden things never happen. And Misha's like, yeah, but this is your father's rule. And Asar says, my father often needs to break his own rules. Every king does. And if they're smart, they'll keep someone disposable on hand to do the rule breaking for them. And Mische realizes this is why Asar has been exiled, because he's essentially in charge of the king's dirty work and has been like kind of sent away for it. Asar ignores her question and uses his mind magic to pull her forward a couple steps. And Misha's like, hey, could you just ask me to step forward a couple steps? Like, you don't need to use my mind magic for that. And then he explains why he needs help with this necromancy. He needs to have like these 5 elements: body, breath, psyche, secrets, and soul. And he has all of them except the soul. And Mische is going to serve as the soul because this body that they are trying to resurrect is also an acolyte of the sun. Mische has some questions about why this human, this body that he has, would need to be locked up in Morinth, this like prison of the gods, but he doesn't answer. And they chat a little bit more about the mission, and Mische asks about like why he needs 2 followers of Atraxis on this mission, and he's like, redundancy essentially, like this is a crucial element in what we're needing to do, and so like I want to make sure we have a backup. And Misha's like, what if I refuse to help you? And Asar says that would be unwise. But he's like, but for the necromancy thing, I won't ask you to do too much. All I need you to do is like bless this candle. Like you actually won't do the necromancy. We don't want to damage your soul, Miss Mische. And the body's name is Chandra. And Mische lights the candle. The spell's ready to go. Asar dismisses her. And then Mische is like, hey, by the way, what has Nyaxia asked you to do? Like, what is this task that we are attempting? And Asar is like, I'm surprised you haven't figured it out yet, Ilya. Seeing as you consider yourself so attuned with the gods. And we learn that he's being sent to resurrect Alaris, the god of death. And Alaris is Nyaxia's husband. And like most of Nyaxia's actions revolve around her husband Alaris, who was murdered by the gods of the White Pantheon. And she's just like in grief and in the anger stage of grief. That's where Nyaxia lives, is the anger stage of grief. It makes sense that her task for this young man is to have him resurrect her husband. Misha's chilling in her cell where she's been for a couple days. Because Asar sent her away to like rest and like get ready for their journey. She falls asleep, and this time she wakes up to Atraxis' voice, and he says to her, hello, Amara, which means bride of the sun. And Mische says, my light. I didn't lift my head, but I felt the scalding heat of the sun bearing down upon me with each step as he approached. I drew in a gasp as his fingers brushed my chin. His touch felt like relief at the end of an endless night. In God's, it burned. Mische is like very overwhelmed by the fact that Atraxis is here, but like really wonders like why he hasn't showed up in any of the other times that she's called for him, because there have been a number of them. And Mische says to him, I was always faithful, my light, always. And she's like normally like pretty embarrassed of her scars, but in this moment she's like proud of them because they show that she like has tried again and again, that she never lost faith that he would return. They're like a visible reminder of her devotion to him. And Atraxis says, I need something from you. And Mische tries to like tell Atraxis about Asar's plan to resurrect Alaris, but Atraxis is like already aware. And he says to her, it is an abomination. But Nyaxia has no limit to her depravity. A major deity cannot kill another of our own. These are the rules set out upon our making an eternity ago, a bid to prevent us from falling into wars against ourselves. What little good such rules have done. And Misha's like, wait, so is Alaris alive? So you guys didn't actually kill him? And Atraxis is like, no, he's far from alive. But my siblings and I could not snuff out his soul forever either. So that night we did what we could. We sliced open my brother's heart. We cut his body into pieces and scattered him, believing that whatever small shards of his soul might remain somewhere could never be restored to him. It was all we could do to prevent a war that would consume the mortal worlds. The death we gave Alaris was the death of mortals. It is not a true death. Necromancy, given the right tools, does not require an intact body. And Misha's like, well, why is she just deciding to do this now? And Atraxis says, in the battles of the House of Night, Nyaxia has now witnessed her own husband's remains defiled and used as weapons among her own followers. At the culmination of that same battle, she too witnessed a goddess of the White Pantheon act against her. She is staking her claim among human nations. She is hungry for power. Nyaxia's madness has been growing since the moment she left the White Pantheon. Alas, now she shatters. Just as I could not kill Alaris myself, she could not resurrect him herself either. So instead she turns to her children to do her work for her. An irrational decision, but who can say why Nyaxia acts the way she does? Justice for Nyaxia. Like, she's in general the worst, but like, I do get it. I like have to often be team Nyaxia because I'm like, wow, the gods were like really mean to her. She does like kill a lot of people like really needlessly, but like, we did see that, if you recall, in that like first duology, we see this big battle and which they're like fighting over like scraps of like teeth and blood from Alaris to use as like weapons against other forces. So Nyaxia has seen this happen and just kind of like seen her husband's body used and defiled again and again, and she's sick of it. Anyway, Atraxas goes on to say, if she's successful in bringing Alaris back, it will be a source of great power for her. She will wage war against the White Pantheon, and he uses his powers to show Mische what that would look like for mortals. And it's just like, havoc, general destruction, havoc, mess. And Mische says, you came to me because you want me to sabotage it. You need to make sure his mission fails. But Atraxas shakes his head. No, you must ensure he succeeds. My brows leapt. Succeeds? And Atraxas says, one cannot kill what is not alive. Alaris's resurrection provides a path to his true death. Indeed, it might be the only opportunity the White Pantheon will ever get to kill him permanently. Essentially, they need to bring Alaris back to life so that Mische can kill him, because if he's in a body, Mische can kill him. Mische is obviously speechless at this because no mortal has ever killed a god. And Atraxas is don't even worry. As soon as he comes back into his body, he's going to be almost human-like in how delicate he is. He'll be a little soupy, a little mushy. You'll be able to do it. I pinky promise. And Atraxas explains that the mission is going to go through these 5 sanctums of the underworld to collect a relic from each one and then use the magic of the sun to claim them. On the journey, she'll find a weapon with the power to pierce a god's flesh, and it'll be what she uses to kill Alaris in the end. And Mische thinks back to her offering day when she was 16 and she married Atraxas, and she thinks to herself, I had promised myself to him that morning. I'd promised him my body, my love, my loyalty. I had promised him both my life and my death. And I had promised him that I would devote my eternal soul to bringing the light to the edges of the horizon, no matter what it took. Call the police. She was 16. Get her out of there. Atraxas is the worst. We'll find more and more. So don't get attached to him. And Mische is why are you trusting me with this? After she realizes that she's failed him. She's become a vampire and a creature of the darkness. And Atraxas says, your whole life and your parents' life and your grandparents' lives had led to this moment. Don't you want this as redemption? And Misha's I do. And thinks about how the love of a god is so different from the love of a mortal. And she thinks about how she really wants a hug. And that's not something a god would offer her though. And Atraxas says to her, this task is the most crucial of your life, Amara. Speak of this to no one. I cannot follow where you go, but know that my light is with you. And Mische says to him, I will not fail, I promise. And she kisses his hand and it burns her. Mische, get out of there, babe. Get out. Okay, that's part 1. We're in part 2, body. So we're actually entering into the descent now. And we always get a little interlude before we start each new part. There's kind of a flashback to Mische's human life. And this one is about Mische growing up in the temple. It starts thusly. The blessed girl lived a blessed life in her new home. And we learn that baby Mische adjusts really well and easily to life at the temple. She gets regular visits from Atraxas, not super often, but a couple times a year during major holidays and events where he just checks in on her. And she grows this friendship with a little boy that lives there. And she talks about how she loves to watch these golden birds fly through the forest. And we learn that these golden birds are called fire finches, and she's obsessed with them. But then the groundskeeper is actually, we're going to have to kill them soon because they're an invasive species, essentially. Someone bought them as a pet, and then they got free, and now they're actually causing a lot of havoc. And so he says, we're going to have to kill them soon. We're going to have to kill them. A year after she arrives at the temple, she sees her first vampire, and her sister tries to pull her away. This is something that the Order of the Destined Dawned work with. One of the things they do is kind of dealing with vampires because the sun is obviously in opposition to the vampires. They are vampire hunters. Seisha, Mische's sister, doesn't want her to see this vampire, but the older members of the order are no, it would be good for her to see it because she is a future bride of Atraxas. This is an important part of what we do. And so in her role as bride of Atraxas, she should see it. Mische, baby Mische, watches as they stab this vampire in the chest. And it's really overwhelming for Mische. And so decides to go out to the garden to kind of get some air. And as soon as she goes out there, the groundskeeper is out there killing birds in front of her. The groundskeeper's oh my gosh, thank you so much for the distraction, Mische. And then murders birds. Okay, really not a great day for Miss Mische. Back with our crew in Morthrin, Luce is coming to wake Mische up in the morning. She's got a headache after her conversation that she had with Atraxas, and she's got herself a new little outfit. It's cutie. It was laid out by the house, and Luce clearly wants her to change into it. And so she changes, and then Luce takes her down to this new room that she hasn't been to before. And in this room, there's this big spiral staircase that just leads down into darkness. And the room is empty except a woman who is like slouched against the opposite wall. And it's Chandra, the woman they raised from the dead just yesterday. They greet each other, but Chandra is like a little skittish of Mische, probably because she's a vampire. And remember, Chandra is part of the order of... She's like an acolyte of Atraxas. She's not from the same order as Mische, but like they both were dedicated to the same god. But Mische's like, hey girl, don't even worry. I'm like a cool vampire. I'm not like other vampires. I'm a cool vampire. That's what Mische says to her. And Chandra says, like, yeah, a vampire who wields the power of Atraxas. I've never seen such a thing. And Mischa's like, hey girl, how are you doing? Are you feeling all right? I know you were dead yesterday. Recovering okay from that. And Chandra is like, sweet girl, you're trying so hard to spare my feelings, and for that, light bless you. He told me what happened to me. Though I admit I don't know if it's sunk in. I feel odd, like I drank too much wine last night. I felt like I was sleeping. I don't remember how it happened. It's a shadow out of the corner of my eye. I was there. Now I am here. Perhaps that is for the best. And then Asar walks in and he's like, oh my gosh, you guys look so rested. Let's go. And then he's like, let's go down the stairs and go to the descent into the underworld. But unfortunately, before they can get on their merry way, another man bursts into the room. It's Elias, which was the man who was Ygritte's royal guard. And he's here on order of the king. The first time I read this book, and if you went and listened to me giving my first impressions over on the Patreon, you'll know that I had no idea who this man was the whole time. I was like, who is this man? It seems like I'm supposed to know him, but I don't know him. We do know him. He is, it seems like Ygritte's royal guard, and maybe like, he like works for the king, but it seems like he's like pretty closely allied with Ygritte, the princess of the Shadowborn. Anyway, so he showed up and he's like annoyed because Asar sent him on like some wacky missions before he got there. He was like sent by the king to assist Asar on this mission, but like Asar really didn't want his help. He like really would prefer this man did not come with them. But unfortunately, he's here. The door to the underworld is in the basement of Morthrin, or as Asar kind of like explained, it's not really a door, but more of a bridge to the underworld. The spiral staircase down, like Morthrin looks like it's a prison, but it actually like it has roots. We see like a visual, pop the map up here. Morthrin is like the prison that sits on top, and like the roots go all the way down into the underworld. Like Morthrin runs alongside the layers of the underworld. Okay, interesting. So they gotta go down the spiral staircase. They're trudging down these stairs. It's very A Court of Silver Flames vibes as they walk down the stairs. And the plan is to go through all 5 sanctums of the descent until they get to the underworld, and they have to gather a piece of Alaris in each level because there is a relic from him in each level, and they need all 5 relics in order to resurrect him. And also Atraxas kind of like set it up so that those relics would be hard to obtain. He was in charge of that. And so that's why they need these girlies with the sun magic, because they need the girlies with the sun magic to kind of undo the like booby traps that Atraxas has put on each of the relics. And Mische is like, as they're kind of debriefing, Mische asks, did Nyaxia tell you all of this? And Asar is like, yeah, but it like does not feel like the whole truth. Like he's not saying everything. And Mische is like, what if Alaris should stay dead? What makes you think it would be a good thing to bring Alaris back? And Asar is like, well, was it a good thing that Alaris was killed to begin with? And Misha's like, well, I mean, like, no, but like the White Pantheon thought they were protecting the peace. Like at the time they thought this was the right thing to do. And Asar says, you say that because hellfire didn't rain down from the skies, but there are many ways to wage a war, Ilia. I know that better than most. I suspect the vampires your kind dismembered for their holy offerings knew it too. If you have any objections, you can take it up with the Dark Mother. And they're like walking down the stairs. They finally reach this area that is like the entryway to the first level body. And there is like something that looks like a shoreline, but instead of water lapping against it, there's like this red electric blood-esque stuff. It's like, well, not water is what we will call it. And it is the veil that separates like Morthrin from the underworld, or from this level of the underworld, from the sanctum. Asar explains, like, as they walk through this veil and as they get deeper into the underworld, they're, like, dying in a way, but Morthrin will offer them a path to avoid the guardians that guard each level, but it's going to be, like, a really treacherous journey, and he's like, okay, there's 2 rules for this first level, or kind of in general. Rule 1, don't draw attention to yourself, okay? There's going to be dead people out and about, and we do not need to bring attention to ourselves. 2, stay on the path. How many of those rules do you think they will follow? Just a guess. So they cross the membrane between worlds, and beyond it is this like darkness that is just like dotted with the silhouettes of countless people. And there are also the 2 they can see like 2 guardians. There's this big lion and this big snake. They're acting as like guardians of this level. And they're walking through this water membrane on this like narrow bridge, and the knot water is like chest deep now. The girlies are starting to get like uncomfortable. It's like rising and rising, and they can see the dead just on the other side of the bridge. And Elias brings up the point, like, there should be a third guardian, shouldn't there? Like, where's the third guardian? There's supposed to be a bird. And Asar is like, oh, the bird died. Fell? He says fell. Because can you die if you're already in the underworld? IDK. The bird fell many years ago. Keep your eyes forward. Like, we don't have time for these stupid questions. Please follow me. Luce is completely underneath the knot water. She is obviously shorter, like, if she's walking, than the girlies. And Mische's a little concerned, but Asar assures them that like the knot water is like harmless. It's just like a representation of the transition from one world to the next. Like, it's okay if your head's underwater. The women don't feel that great about it, and they are shorter, and so their heads are almost underwater. And Mische starts to have flashbacks to when she was turned, because it feels similar, this like bridge between life and death, this place where you're like neither alive nor dead. The pathway ahead of them is getting worse and worse. They're like stones missing from it, and just kind of like more decrepit. And as they're going, something strikes them, and Chandra freaks out and stops moving, even though Asar is like, you gotta keep going, but she like can't. She's like so scared. And Mische is like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Do you remember the hymn of the second sun? And they like start to like sing it, and Mische's like using this to encourage her. Unfortunately, then darkness follows them. You know, it didn't last that long, but there's a scream. There's something like flying overhead of them, like hunting them. Elias has a sword out. He's ready to cut it up. The path is like shaking underneath them, and Elias falls from the bridge as he like tries to like strike this thing with his sword. Chandra tries to like reach out her hand to catch him, but like he's substantially larger than her, and so he just like pulls her over. They just like topple over the edge. And then Asar like steadies Mische so she doesn't fall, but is like, okay, you and Luce head on, keep on keeping on, and I will like deal with this. But then a shadowy figure with an outstretched arm comes like straight for him, attacks him, and Mische like throws herself in front of Asar, and it's enough to like knock them off the path. And then Asar is like, I told you to stay on the damned path. Now they're off the path. Things are going awry. Next thing Mische knows, she is like coming to, and she is in some sort of cave, and she's covered in fresh burns because when she had jumped in front of Asar, she had like used her sun magic to like protect him. And Asar says to her, your God doesn't love you half as much as you think he does. You burned yourself to the bone. It's beyond me why Atraxas still allows you to use his magic. Like, please be careful of the price you pay for it. Like, this doesn't like totally add up to me. Like, why is Atraxas allowing you to use this if it is like eating you alive? It seems like, one, he should either make it so it doesn't burn you up, or he should not let you use it. Like, this is not what love looks like, is the message we will continually get in this book. Asar winds up using his shadow magic to heal Mische, and Mische is like very impressed with that because she is under the impression that shadow magic can only like really be used to like compel someone to do something, to manipulate things, but like this is like a very tangible thing it's doing, and also like a good thing. And Asar like brushes aside that and says that like shadow magic can be used like however. And he's like, okay, we gotta go track down everybody else. And he once again says, I told you to stay on the path. And Mischa's like, I didn't mean to fall. And the reason I did was because I was saving your life. And Asar's like, well, the guardians wouldn't have been an issue. And Mischa's like, okay, I wasn't stopping the guardians from attacking you. I was stopping that shadowy thing, and you know it. Like, that's not what was happening. They go to the entrance of this cave, and there is a whole like land out there. She can like finally like see it. And there are these like, it's a land about decay. And so there's like mushrooms everywhere, and these like mosses and funguses, and it's like pretty, but like gross. And everything's kind of red. There's like red rivers and mountains and cliffs. The cave has like a blood waterfall that is running over the entrance, so that's kind of gross. And Asar explains that this level is body, so it's all about decay and the shedding of people's physical forms. But he also explains that he's never been to this portion of the sanctum before because they are becoming more difficult to travel through. But because of their anchors that they all have, so Asar gave all of them those little anchors that he gave Mische with his shadow magic, and so they can all, like, they'll be able to find their buddies over wherever they are because of the anchors. Also, Luce is dealing with it. Luce is on the case, and we can trust Luce, you know? Asar is, like, complaining as they walk around, and he was like, Chandra was not moving fast enough. Like, if she would have just moved faster, like, we wouldn't have had to deal with this. And Mischa's like, well, she was, like, scared. She's just, like, a human. She was, like, a human yesterday who was, like, dead. So, like, maybe cut her a little slack. And Asar is like, no. Like, we have stuff to do. And he says to her, don't forget that she was locked up in Morthrin for a reason. He doesn't explain what that reason is. We'll find out later. Because remember, Morthrin is like jail of the gods. So if this girlie was locked up in Morthrin, like probably she was like a little bit bad news bears, you know? And then before that Asar can get too far, like following their anchors, there's a scream. And Asar just says to Mische, that'll be them. Up ahead, they like find this like mass of wraiths lurching that are like in these like lurching movements that are chasing their friends. I'm using the word friends like quite broadly here. They're not really friends. They're companions on this journey. And we kind of get the sense that like the souls in body, because it is focused on like shedding the physicality of yourself, are kind of like zombies. They like are like half rotted, learning how to move around sort of creatures, zombie vibes. And Asar explains, death is hungry, starving for what they once knew. Like you and I crave blood. That's what we are to them. Get your sword out. Don't look at me like that, dawn drinker. Yes, the sword. I'll need you function at the temple. No burning yourself alive before we make it there. Don't let them touch you. So that's like the instructions for the wraiths is like, do not let them touch you. Slice him up with swords, and don't use too much of her sun magic because he can't have her in such bad shape again as they get to the temple where they're going to have to get that relic. Almost immediately, that wave of people is upon them, and Mische is finding it pretty difficult not to let any of them touch her as she cuts them up. And Asar is trying to get them to run towards this like passageway in the cliffs, but then Mische hears someone shouting her name, and she's distracted. And while she's distracted, one of the Wraith women slaps her in the face, and it makes Mische dizzy. Like that place, that like movement like really like rattles her because, you know, she's dead. And Asar's like, I told you not to let them touch you. They're finally racing towards this temple. Asar manages to put up a little shield behind them so that the wraiths can't follow them. They make it into the temple. It's been taken over by mushrooms. It's this like beautiful temple, but it's like covered with the same sort of like fungus and mushrooms and like creepy decaying, but like sort of pretty rot from outside. And Mische is like really impressed with it. And Chandra's like, it's just death. And this reminds Mische of a time in which she'd found a dead firefinch, and her sister was like, ew, that's disgusting, like, don't touch it. And Mische said to her sister, it's not disgusting. I replied, we'll all look like that one day. I'm sorry, that's actually not a good reason for it not to be disgusting. Sometimes, like, things are disgusting even when they apply to us. You know? Like, sometimes you have the stomach flu, and that's disgusting, even though, like, sometimes that happens to you. But, like, rotting things are gross intentionally. Like, our biology is like, stay away from those. Those could give you diseases. Don't play with dead birds. I do think that's a good rule. Sorry. Asar's all business. They need to move quickly before the dead attack again and be able to make their way into this temple. They start to explore a bit, but pretty quickly they encounter a giant bird inside the temple. It's the third guardian. Remember how we were like looking for him out there? He's in here. They're running around trying to avoid this guardian, and Mische's like, I thought you said it was dead. And Asar is like, it is dead. And Elias is like, it doesn't look dead to me. And Elias is struck by the bird, and it's clear that it's using Atraxis's magic with the way the wound burns. Like, this bird is kind of almost like composed or like filled with fire in some sense. And Asar is looking to Mische for some sort of idea on like what they should do about this giant bird that's attacking them, because it is connected to the sun magics, to Mische's god. And Mische turns to Chandra and tells her like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have to work together. So Elias and Asar are gonna act as a distraction as the girls work together to summon flame and sun, and use that to like attack the bird. It like literally doesn't work at all. But it was like a nice attempt. We love the effort. A for effort, Mische. Mischa's now like watching this bird. Asar's kind of like explaining what he thinks happened. He explains that the guardian died a long time ago and that Atraxis must have kind of like taken it over, commandeered his body is what is said. And Mische can tell now that she's watching it that it doesn't seem to have full control over itself. It's like crashing into walls and like stumbling around a lot and looks to be in like a lot of pain, because, which makes sense, like as a creature of the underworld to be filled with flames, like probably doesn't feel super cozy and good. And so Chandra and Mische are going to try to put out the flames so Asar can get inside and get the relic out, because the relic is within the bird. That is what they've decided. It's not guarding the relic, it is what contains the relic. Asar creates a distraction again. He breaks open one of the glass walls of the temple and lets a wave of these wraiths pour in. That does pull the bird's attention, and then Asar is able to make like a net out of his shadow magic to restrain it so Mische and Chandra can pull the flame out of it. And then Mische and Asar climb on top of the bird, and the bird is like clearly in a lot of pain. Mische is like talking to it and like trying to soothe it, and then Elias is meanwhile holding back the dead on the ground, but they like need to move quickly. They don't have a lot of time. The dead are really coming for them. Mische finds the relic and then is transported into a memory of Alaris, and it's the first meeting of Alaris and Nyaxia, where Nyaxia stabs him in the chest. But like, there's such a clear sense that Nyaxia is like desperate, that she is trapped in this situation. She has no choice, or she feels she has no choice but to stab Alaris. And the first relic is the branch that Nyaxia used to stab Alaris. And then Asar points out the altar at this temple and directs Mische to head over there and to head to like the pool of blood that seems to be around it. Mische steps into the pool, but before she can like disappear into it, a figure throws itself at her. It's a voice moaning, "Please, Mische, I've waited so long, I've missed you." And it's the boy from the memory we got at the beginning of this section. A boy she hasn't seen in 50 years, but he's like in bad shape. He's decaying. He's like missing the whole bottom half of his jaw. And Asar like rips him off of Mische and hauls her away with him as they sink down into the pool. They land back in the hallways of Morthrin. They all stink of rotten blood. Chandra's vomiting. Asar's lying on the ground, not moving. He wakes up and confirms he got the relic. So they did complete task 1 of 5. Asar is annoyed for Elias for not listening to the instruction to like not strike out and just to like ignore what was happening around them. But Elias is like, "We got the relic. It seems like it ended fine. So why are you lecturing me?" And Mische is like a little confused because it does look like they are exactly back where they started. And she thought they were supposed to be like traveling down through the descent. And Asar explains kind of what's happening. In a sense, we're in the descent now. We left Morthrin behind and we didn't go backwards, but Morthrin is in a building. It's a passageway that bridges the gap between worlds. And he explains that this path will lead them some of the way down, but it will get more difficult as they get deeper into the various sanctums. But they'll have a few weeks of easy journeying before they reach the sanctum of breath. Like the sanctums are pretty like far apart and they have to travel through Morthrin in order to get to like the next one. Morthrin has a couple rooms ready for them. How nice, with clean clothes and blood and even some bathtubs. Mische goes over to Chandra, who's praying in Atrian, the language Mische had like spoken as a child. And Mische explains that she was born in Slenka and then moved to Vostis. And Chandra's from Arian. I don't know why I decided that you needed to know all those city names. Maybe they'll become important someday. And Mische offers to patch up injuries for Chandra, but Chandra's initially like, "I'm a healer, I don't need your help." And Mischa's like, "You know what? It's easier if someone else does it." Like she's insistent. And Chandra relents. And Mische mentions that she once visited with Chandra's sect. Chandra talks about how like they were known for their parties. Okay, love that. It's giving sorority house. This house is known for its parties. Love that for her. She came and she kind of explains how she ended up in Obatros, and she says that she came to Obatros unwillingly because they needed a midwife for vampires, which like often happens because vampires have like fairly difficult births and they're will often steal like human healers to help them through this process. And Mischa's like, "I'm sorry." And Chandra says, "There's no light without darkness. There's no life without suffering." And Mische says, "My sister used to say that." And Chandra says, "She must have been very wise. I can't bemoan my circumstances. I still feel the sun, and you must be very devout to still have your magic after your change." And Mische is like, "It's a part of me. I like can't abandon it. Like even though I'm a vampire who is completely like burned by the sun, I like can't abandon that part of me." And Chandra's like, "Well, at least you can go home after this." And Elias says, "Nyaxia will reward you for this, whatever you desire." And Chandra's like, "I just want to go home. Like that's all I want." And then Mische starts to like feel a little homesick. This is the first time she's really like allowed herself to feel it, but she's like really missing Rain. Even though she didn't really feel like totally at home with him, their friendship was like really important to her. He was the closest thing to a home she had since she became a vampire. And then she thinks back to her own wedding night and the conversation she had with Atraxis, in which Atraxis, after their ceremony had happened, and they're now like alone in a bedroom. Mische is 16 years old. 16 years old at this time, just so you know that in your brain. And Atraxis says to Mische, "What do you wish to ask, Amara?" And Mische says, "You will never abandon us, will you?" The words sounded so pathetically mortal, the kind of thing that I imagined human lovers whispered to each other in the dark. "Promise me you'll always love me. Promise me you'll always stay." My vows had included no such things. A god does not have to promise to love you forever. He doesn't have to give you fealty or affection. Instead, he takes your soul and offers it for something so much greater. Purpose. I was so certain that he'd be angry at me for asking, but Atraxis, kind Atraxis, instead laughed. "Of course not," he said. "You're mine forever." Mische that night startles awake as if someone like had shaken her, but like the room is still empty when she opens her eyes. Chandra and Elias are still sleeping, but Luce is missing. And it feels like the prison itself is like waking her and pulling her into the hallway. Rain would have called it reckless to just wander off into a shadowy hallway in the underworld, but contrary to common belief, I wasn't reckless. I just followed my gut. Some might even call that faith. Love that from Mische. She's pulled towards this iron gate that has like a stained glass eye in the middle, and it's hanging open, and beyond it is just this like undulating mist of like purple and black and blue and green, stars and sunrises, fire and ice. And the dead are like lurching through the fog through this gate. Asar is standing in the room with his sword trying to like fight them back, but he's losing badly. Luce is trying to help. She's running around trying to like herd the people, the Wraith away from him, but he's got like Wraith like hanging on to him. Mische charges into their rooms, but her flames do not come, and she does not even have a weapon. So the Wraith immediately just start like grabbing her. They're like, girl, what's your plan? Another Wraith grabs her, and this time it's the boy again, and he's once again asking her to help him. Asar drags him away and like chucks him out through the dark doorway. Asar kind of explains that he needs to use the glyphs around the door with their magic to hold back what is on the other side. And Mische helps kind of like finish Asar's magic using her shadow magic. And so his shadow magic is like, she describes it as like completing his sentences. Like he's the one with like putting the threads out, but she's like tying them off essentially. And then the gate snaps close. Asar is like crumpled on the floor in front of it. He's like completely passed out. Luce is whining and crying. But he's okay. He's just like exhausted. Luce leads Mische with Asar like kind of like propped up on her back into the hallway into this like single wooden door. They walk through it and it's this like candlelit bedchamber. Mische just wants to like put Asar to bed. He's like passed out. It seems like the best course of action. But Luce is like insistent that they take a bath first. Asar is meanwhile bleeding everywhere. And Mische's like, it does smell extra delicious. The bath is full of not water, but like something else. Some more not water. Luce helps Mische hoist Asar into this bathtub, and then Luce insists that Mische get in as well. And almost immediately, as soon as she's like under this water, she like falls asleep. When she wakes up, she's like in this bath, curled up against Asar. They're kind of canoodling in the bathtub. Like they are like real snuggled up next to each other. And she realizes where she is, and she's trying to like scoot away from Asar when Asar wakes up. And he goes, Ilya, why are you on top of me? And Mische says, I saved your life again. You should be more appreciative. And then she asks like a bunch of questions about what just happened and what she just saw. And Asar explains that they're like currently in his rooms, that he has these little places that are like bedrooms along the descent because he has to kind of do this gate maintenance that he was just doing regularly. He's in charge of not only like the prison above, but the wraiths underneath, these like ghostly spirits that are trying to pass to the underworld. And then he also explains that like the bath they just took washes away the influence of the dead, because when they touch you, they leech away your life and their death can cling to you. So they needed to wash in this like special elixir to like wash that influence of death off of them. And the dead are starting to follow them because they're attracted to the living, and the wards are starting to decay. So, and the sanctums are as well. The sanctums are not passing the people through in the way that they should be doing. And so people are kind of getting clogged in some of these sanctums. And so it's easier for them to leak out. It's just like things are kind of falling apart because Alaris has been gone for so long, and Alaris is the one who like set all of these like magic systems in place, and so they're starting to like decompose without him there to maintain them. And Asar explains that like they require more maintenance, but he never lets the gates fail, but it's like getting harder. And then he's looking at her. She's like fresh burns all over her body. And he says, I told you to stop being so careless with that. And Mische is like, you'd rather I just let the dead take you away? Magic has a cost. You of all people must know that. And Asar says, you need to learn how to use your Shadowborn gifts. You have other magic that won't burn you up. Instead of flaying yourself, you are a vampire, Ilya. Not just a vampire, but one created by one of the most powerful bloodlines in Obatras. Call yourself whatever you want, but your stubbornness is not worth your life. And Mische says to him, I did not choose this. I did not want this. I was 19 years old when your brother turned me and then left me to die in the dirt. Don't try to tell me that's some kind of gift that I'm supposed to embrace. I lost everything that night. Whatever magic I have from him, prince or not, I don't want it. I wield the magic of Atraxis, not Nyaxia. I still have my faith and the love of my God. That is all I need. And Asar is like gently traces over these scars that like cover her body. And he says, right, looks a lot like love. And then he continues, Malik is the worst. And I know you didn't want this power, but it isn't my brother's anymore. It's yours. And he like goes on to explain that as like super strong. And he feels like if she like actually like nourished it and like trained this magic, it could be as strong, if not stronger than his brother's ever was, because like his brother was kind of lazy. And so if she had the discipline to actually train her magic, she could be incredibly powerful. And then Asar's like, also I could use your assistance at some of these gates. And Misha's like, why don't you ask Elias? And Asar says, Elias is the kind who is better off swinging swords around. And Mische is like, I can't. It is not who I am. Asar goes on. When I was exiled to Morthrin, I thought that I had nothing left worth living for. I was the bastard second son who was always lucky to be allowed to live. But I did what I had to earn something like respect, to build something out of nothing. And believe me, I bled for it, Ilya. Carved out my own heart for it. And I destroyed it all because I couldn't even hate my father for sending me here, because I deserved it. I was happy to let this place be my end. But it wasn't. It was a beginning. And Mische says, how? And Asar kind of goes on to explain. I began to hear things that no one else did. Cries that needed answering. The world is built up atop the invisible, abandoned souls. They needed someone. And Mische is kind of like really moved by the speech. It's like definitely not what she thought Asar was. This man who has decided his like life's mission is to help these people who have no one to help them. And she agrees to help him. She says, okay, fine, I will help you with these gates. Which brings us to part 3, breath. And again, we get a little interlude. This time Mische is like a teenager and a young teen, like probably like 14, 13. And her and her sister are traveling pretty consistently to like help people. And Mische kind of talks about her life at the temple and how she is kind of like the first one at meals and is like honored because of her position as bride of Atraxis, but she really struggles with lessons and combat training. That's like not really her vibe. And she has this best friend that is a young boy. We met him in the last interlude. We've seen him a couple times now, and they're starting to catch some flirty vibes. Like she's thinking about kissing this boy. There's one day in which they're in her bedroom together, and she's like really like, maybe I should kiss him. Luckily, her sister walks in before anything happens because Mische is promised to Atraxis. So she would be severely punished if she betrayed him by kissing another. And it's the first time that she's realized what this like promise to Atraxis actually means. Her order does not take vows of chastity. None of the other priestesses have to take vows of chastity. But essentially, Mische has to because she is already vowed to Atraxis. So she cannot kiss a boy. And so from that day forward, she makes sure to keep her distance from him. They keep traveling. The crew keeps traveling through Morthra and through this descent. It's exhausting. At night, her and Asar are restoring the glyphs and practicing her Shadowborn magic. It's getting easier and easier for her. It feels almost fun and very natural. It reminds her a lot of when she first had the sun magic and she was like using it for the first time as a young girl. When she's alone, she does practice her sun magic, which only grows more difficult, she says, like a boulder that continues to get heavier. And Asar really seems to be like observing her closely when she is using her Shadowborn magic. She thinks of it almost as if she's an artifact that he would like to add to his collection. Most of the gates are substantially easier to close than that first gate. There's only been one other where the dead have actually breached the gate, and Luce and Asar managed to handle most of it. But again, that boy was there, Mische's boy. And after they deal with that, they're chilling in Asar's bedroom, one of his rooms that he has along this path, and he says, are any of the wraiths here for you? And Asar says, I don't have many who would follow me anywhere, dead or alive, but we all have things that haunt us. I've damned many souls to the descent. I wouldn't fault those scorned souls if they were looking for their vengeance. And then Asar asks her about the boy that has followed her. And he's like, is it a former lover of yours? He's like, he's aware that their order doesn't take vows of chastity. And Mische is like, actually my sect did. We actually did. You're wrong on that one. He's like, okay, what's his name? Mische doesn't want to answer because she hasn't like said his name in ages. And so instead she asks another question. What happens to them? The ones who are stuck out there in the descent. Can they pass through on their own? And Asar says sometimes, but most of the time they just wander. And Mische says forever. And Asar says, just tell me his name. Just say his name. And Mische says, Eomin. She probably says it correctly. It's Eomin. Eomin? Finally, they reach the gate for breath. It is much bigger than the gates that Asar and Mische have been working on to close. And lightning is like running through it. And there's these like red liquid spilling over the tiles in like, as it like almost looks like it's like breathing. And then there's a shimmering veil over the doorway, rendering everything beyond it in shadows. Asar lets them know that there'll be no path through the sanctum. The path thing, I guess, is only for a body. Like, real quick, we're out of paths. And he's like, okay, so as soon as we walk through that, it's actually going to be like a sheer fall. And so we all need to hold hands so we don't get separated. And then they hold hands, all of them, all in a little row. They hold hands, jump through, and fall. It is very dusty here, and everyone is immediately coughing up mouthfuls of this gray dust as they land. It's looking more like the underworld now. There is no sky, just layers of like these red rivers that are like layered over each other. It's giving to me the Upside Down from Stranger Things. Again, Asar urges them to be quick so that the dead don't have quite as much time to realize that they are there. They are looking for a relic that looks like vivacity. Asar explains. He goes on to say, a perfect corpse is still not living until it breathes or until its heart beats or changes with time. That's breath, the nature of being alive. It may be something intangible, but it would represent the essence of connection to life. Okay, that was really helpful. That really helped me look for what I'm looking for. Someone said that to you and they were like, could you find something that like kind of looks like this? I would be like, girl, what the heck? Like, what color is it? They continue through these cliffs until they find themselves on a narrow bridge, the landscape changing around him. The wraiths here are translucent, giving like classic cartoon ghost vibes. Last layer of the sanctum, zombies. This layer, ghosties. As they walk, the wraiths become more numerous and are growing closer to them. And Asar's like, just ignore them because they want attention. And if they get it, they'll just like grab onto it and want more. I'm going to read you a little quote, a little fun thing if you've been paying attention. Asar, Elias says uneasily as he narrowly avoided the curious reaching hand of what looked like to be a dead priestess, blindfold over her eyes. I think this is an Arcessian. We love If You Had Slain the Vampire Conqueror, which you should. Fantastic book. I loved it. We know the Arcessian. That's what Slaying the Vampire Conqueror is about the Arcessian. Our main character is an Arcessian girlie. They finally reach a building with 3 massive bone spires, and it is surrounded by these beasts called soul eaters. And Asar explains that these beasts called soul eaters are attracted to wraiths, which probably means the building is full of them. If these creatures are like circling the outside, it probably is because the inside is full of wraiths. And then a woman in a nightgown comes towards Chandra, and he's like, I know you. And Mische is able to like pull Chandra out of the wraith's grip. Elias is starting to like chop through things. Obviously, that's kind of all he knows how to do. And now the wraiths are upset and they are running. So they're running for the door to the building. Luce in the lead, following Luce, Queenie McQueenerson. The soul eaters are ready to like chow down on all the wraiths coming towards the path, and they like skid in through this open door. They're inside this building and it's absolutely gorgeous, but it isn't full of wraiths like they thought it would be. It's like completely empty, actually. And as Mische looks around, she realizes like the whole thing is like breathing. The whole thing is like moving with this like inhale, exhale sort of pattern of breath. There like should be wraiths in here. It is like not great news that there are not wraiths here, because the wraiths should be like drawn to Alaris's relic, to the last scraps of Alaris's magic that are within that relic. Then Luce starts growling and everything goes dark, and a stinky plume of smoke starts rolling through the building, and a woman emerges from the dark, and she says to Asar in particular, I knew you'd come back. That's what I always loved about you. You were always so very, very loyal. And Asar's like, don't look at her. But Mische can't look away because the spooky girlie is so stunning. She's like, oh my god, this girl is so gorgeous. She's not a wraith though. She's like too with it. She seems like too logical and like solid to be a wraith. And she says to them, the girlie says, I've missed you so much. It's been a long time. And Asar's just like, run. And they start running. But Mische is like, we can't actually just leave Asar behind. That would be a bad idea. And Elias is like, he literally told us to. And Mische is like, I think she's going to kill him. Like if we leave him with Spooky Girlie, I think Spooky Girlie's going to kill him. And Mische is running around. She bonks her head because she's moving too quickly. And she realizes the temple wants to make them frantic. And she like needs to find a way to like calm herself down. It's a maze. And she knows there must be a way to like figure it out. There must be some secret. She touches a wall and she feels glyphs, and then she is able to use her sun magic to like feed into these glyphs, and it lights a path through this maze that they need to follow. Unfortunately, the path does go forwards and backwards, and it does act as like a big sign pointing Asar and the spooky girlie right in her direction. Mische follows the light, hoping that Elias and Chandra found it somewhere too, and leads her to a big circular room. The floor is littered with these wraiths that have been eaten. Only a few are like barely moving, still alive. And it's pretty clear pretty quickly that the spooky girlie has been eating these guys up, which is why the building was not full of wraiths, is because she's just been eating them as they come in. Okay. Then a cold falls over her. The spooky girlie has also followed this path to this room, and she whispers, it's been so long since I have been warm too. I used to be as pretty as you. And Mische's like, what's your name? Hey girl, what a weird question to be asking right now. I don't think we need to ask Spooky Girlie what her name is. This reminds me of Mr. Dory. If you read Throne of Glass, you know Dorian does love to ask a question at an inconvenient time. So, and you know what? We love both of them for that. Anyway, the spooky girl goes, you pay a great cost for your light, don't you, pretty bird? And Asar arrives in the room and is like, please, Spooky Girlie, leave her alone. Meaning Mische. The spooky girl is like, he likes you, even if he doesn't know it yet. But don't be fooled, he will ruin you one day too. She is very interesting. I see why you enjoy her. Another attractive curiosity. But she only knows how to love things she can fix. And there is no fixing you, is there? And Asar is like, you're not here for her. And the spooky girlie says, and who am I here for? You? Are you here for me, Asar? Did you come back for me? Asar is like speaking directly into Mische's head using his shadow magic. He says to her, she can't pass through this door. As soon as I tell you, I need you to run. Asar is like, I have come back for you so many times. You know that. Let me try one more. And Spooky Girlie says, you never say my name anymore. And Asar reaches out her hand to the Spooky Girlie. Spooky Girlie is like holding Mische. I don't think I said that. Spooky Girlie has Mische. Asar is trying to like be like, Spooky Girlie, come here. Come here. And Mische can sense that he's like desperate. And there's like not anger. She's not mad at this girl. There's like a desperation in this way that he is interacting with spooky girlie. And she can also tell that the spooky girlie is like so lonely. And she does go to Asar at this outstretched hand. And at that moment, Asar tells Mische to run. Mische opens the door and uses her flame magic, but it's too slow. Chandra has to help her use her flame magic against the door to illuminate the symbol of the sun. And then Asar uses his shadow magic to pass Mische the key. And they step through the door towards the spiral staircase. And blood is like pouring down from the ceiling. And Spooky Girlie is screaming while Asar tries to give him just a little bit more time. And then he dives for the door. And Mische is able to pull him through. And then the door slams shut behind them. Asar is still holding Mische's hand as they crumble at the base of the stairs. And Mische is like, what was that? In the words of Lord. What was that? No, actually, she says, what was she? Which are not the words of Lord. Ugh. Before she can get an answer, a voice comes from the shadows and says, you reek of the living. It's a golden panther, kind of in the same style as Luce. So it's got a skull head. Cute. But it's also gold. I don't know if panthers can be gold. I think panthers are necessarily black. Please don't quote me on my big cat knowledge. The panther says to them, you are a very long way from home. Many years since we last scented the sun upon these hallowed halls. Many years since we have allowed it through. Many have fallen to the hands of the traitor. The decay spreads, the guardians wither. He tried to banish us too, but we still stand. Thousands of years, and we protect our charge. That will not end tonight. Misha's like, hey, for sure. We actually only came here to right an ancient wrong, guardian. We actually mean no harm to you. We are not trying to kick you out. We don't know who did that, but like, that's not us. And the panther says, a truth that is not a truth, a lie that is not a lie. Oh, the curse of mortal tongues. Do you think we do not see your soul, fallen one? And Asar steps forward and says, I serve your master. I have stood watch over his realm for 154 years. This, I know, is a blink in comparison to your eternal vigil. I know, too, that I am but a fallible mortal. I have little to offer but my intentions, but I see the way this realm hurts. I see your sacrifice. I ask you, guardians, to trust me with a relic Alaris left behind. Trust me to restore this realm to what it once was. And the panther says, we are no soothsayers, yet we are close to the threads of fate. We can feel how they vibrate with your intentions. Indeed, a noble mission for such fragile souls. But no mortal can complete such a task. You will not survive the journey you attempt. And Asar says, death is not the same as failure. The panther goes on. For millennia we have stood, it said. We grow weak. The inevitable bears down upon us. Soon our bones will collapse beneath it, to be buried beneath the million other damned innocents whose fates balance upon your shoulders. Tell us, do you still wish to cure the incurable? And Asar's answer is immediate. Yes, he whispered. The panther had lowered its chin very well. And then they are taken to another memory of Alaris's, and this time it's Nyaxia again, but this time she is surrounded by flowers. She's in like a field of poppies. And Nyaxia says to Alaris, I like it here, but you should have made more of it. And Alaris says, why? And Nyaxia says, why not? Because you can. And Alaris thinks to himself, Nyaxia is eternally hungry. I see now that this is why my siblings resent her, because they fear her. They are right to. She is terrifying, but I have grown fond of her. And now when she speaks of great plans of bigger worlds, I see them reflected in the eternity of her eyes. And they kiss. Back in the real world, they are still with the panther, but now Asar is surrounded by poppy petals. And the panther looks really sad. I don't know how panthers look sad, but Mische swears this panther looks sad. And he says, we were not created to understand such things, it said. He could have had any woman, and yet his heart was so hungry for her that he let it devour the world for a fleeting taste. Carissa once again cooking with the panther. They finish everything up, and then as they're leaving, the panther has a little bit more to say to them. He says, be wary, mortals, of such deadly cravings. I smell fate upon you, but I also smell hunger. Okay. Foreboding. As soon as they finish that, they're back in the hallways of Morthrin. Mische is feeling like better. Even though this far into the descent, Morthrin is like falling apart a little bit, but it's like a relief to be in Morthrin and not in these sanctums. And Mische thinks about the kind of ominous vibes, the warning they got from the panther guy. And Elias is like, who was that? Meaning not the panther guy, but the spooky girl. And he says to Asar, you were expecting her. You knew she was there. And Asar's like, well, I warned you we'd see the dead. And Elias says, did you think I wouldn't recognize her? Is all this just for her? I should have known there was never a text from Nyaxia. And Mische tries to be like, Elias, you need to calm down. You're being a little angry. And she like touches his shoulder and he like backhands her. And Asar is not okay with that. Asar throws Elias against the wall and says, do not touch her. It isn't your fault that you can't handle witnessing the results of your own actions. And then Asar kicks Elias out, and Elias is like cranky pants, and he wants to just take the artifacts they've already found, because now they have 2 of them, and use them as weapons. And he like talks about how in the, like, that's how the end of the Nightborn duet ended, was with the use of these relics of Alaris as weapons. They hold tremendous power, and they could be used in a way that is like quite destructive, if that's how they're directed. And Mischa's like, no, you can't do that. No mortal should have that kind of power. And Elias is like, all the vampire houses are preparing for war. And even the House of Night, where Mische is coming from with Rain and Araya, are cultivating these weapons. And then he mentions the House of Blood has recently conquered a human nation. If you were reading Slaying the Vampire Conqueror with us, you would know. And Asar says, if I listened to your advice, Nyaxia would smite us. And then he silences Elias with a compulsion. He says, nope, no more talking for you. And he tells them to rest, and him and Luce leave. They walk for several long days. Asar and Mische do not train at all during this stretch. They do not close gates, or at least Mische doesn't help close gates. And Mische is having nightmares most nights. One particularly bad night, she dreams again of Eilman. And he says to her, I'm so cold, I just need to get warm. And then she hears another voice, a female voice, her sister's voice. All we need is light me. That's all, please. And Mische says, I can help you. And her sister says, please, Mische, I followed you. I trusted you. And Mische says, I can still save you. But as she turns around towards these voices, all she sees is a dead firefinch. She awakes from this nightmare, and she feels like pretty deeply in her gut that it was not just a dream, but like a vision of some sort. And she like needs to prevent it from coming true. And so she starts running for the gates, but Asar stops her before she can open them. And he's like, you can't touch that. But she can hear them calling just on the other side of the gate, those voices. And Asar is holding her, and he's like, look at me. Remember where you are. I need you to breathe. And Mischa's like, it wasn't a dream. And he's like, no one is there. The gates are still standing. Everything is fine. And he goes on to explain that the boundaries between worlds get thinner the closer they get to the actual underworld. And they're so close to Psyche that also things might start messing with their heads as they get really close, because that is their next sanctum level they need to get to. And Mische sees Eilman's face in her head and starts crying. And Asar is like trying to soothe her. And Mische explains that she's worried about her friend because she hasn't seen him recently. He wasn't in breath, and she's really worried that a soul eater must have gotten him. If he was in body, but he didn't make it all the way down to breath. And Asar promises that he's fine, but he won't explain how he knows. And Mische says, Asar Votari, Wraith warden, prince of the Shadowborn, caretaker of Morthrin, I can read you like a god's damned book, and you want to tell me, because if you didn't, wandered off to go loom in the shadows menacingly by now. And then Asar like relents, and he leads her somewhere. He leads her through the belly of Morthrin until they reach this like little creek of water, this little like sliver of water running through Morthrin made of blood. And Asar's like, well, it's not a lot, but it'll have to work. The best we have. He kneels down and he sticks both of his hands into the blood, and he instructs Mische to do the same, to touch the bottom. And then he tells her to say the boy's name. She follows his instructions, and then she sees the boy. He looks perfect, just as she remembered him in life, not this like jaw missing, half rotted version she saw in body. And Mische says, he's healed. And Asar's like, no, he's dead. And Mische said he made it. And Asar is like, okay, that's enough. And takes away the reflection. Mische is devastated because she would have happily like kept watching this reflection of this boy she had once known and been so close with. And Asar says it's dangerous to look for too long. Best not to give death too much time to call to you. And Asar explains that he led this boy down through the sanctums to help him in the underworld. He says it doesn't always work, and I can't do it very often. But I want you to know he doesn't blame you. You should know that. And Mischa's like, you talk to him. And Asar says, sometimes they just need someone to listen. He damn near worshipped you, Ilya. And Mische says, he was a good friend and a good person. He didn't deserve it. What else did he tell you? And Asar is like, bits and pieces. The dead aren't always the best at logical conversations, but he talked about your journey here. It takes a brave soul to travel to the land of the vampires to preach the light, Dawn Drinker. I will give you that. And Mische says, I told you I wasn't a crusader, but it took you a conversation with a corpse to make you believe me. And Asar says, 5 minutes with you, Ilya, and I knew you weren't a crusader. He goes on to say, we all have ghosts in our past. We can't give them the power to define our futures too. And Mische says, was the woman in breath part of your past? And Asar says, not all the dead are so easily put to rest. And Mische says to him, it doesn't make the love worth less just because you can't help her the way you wish you could. How sweet. We kind of like don't fully know what's going on here, but like Mische can definitely sense that like there is a relationship, that he loved this woman at some point, and we'll learn more about Spooky Girl, but this is like a very complicated relationship between him and Spooky Girlie. Asar's trying to like leave. He's like, we gotta go. He's trying to get out of this sentimental moment, but Mische needs a hug. And so she gives him this like long hug. She says, thank you. And she's like crying into his side. And then he's just standing there, and Mischa's like, you just have to accept it. And then he says never, but then he like relents, and he's like holding her too. And it's like a very sweet moment. Then they're walking back to their rooms, and Mische brings up about like what Elias had mentioned about using these relics as a weapon. And she's like, I just want to like make sure that's not something you're considering. Like the consequences would truly be terrible. Like the loss of innocent life would be just astronomical. And Asar says he's not planning on it because he already has enough marks against his soul. And then Mische is like, hey, by the way, what did Nyaxia offer you for completing this task? And Asar says, the greatest Shadowborn king in a millennia, history shall know thy name, etc., etc. And then Mischa's like, I really don't believe that. It doesn't sound right. And Asar says, it is a powerful gift to right a wrong. Okay. And my last note here is that the vibes are flirty. I feel like you can't tell that here because they're like talking about like life and death and like what it means to be human, but like they're flirtily talking about that. You know? It's as flirty as you can be when you're in the underworld. Pretty flirty. How many Hades and Persephone retellings have there been? So many, and they're all a little flirty. So like underworld vibes can go flirty. Last chapter of this section. It's getting colder as the crew trudges toward Psyche, and Mische's nightmares just keep getting worse night by night. Mische isn't dreaming of Eamon anymore, of that boy, but of her sister and Malik and Atraxis and the terrible future that Atraxis warned of. Her and Asar go back to fixing the gates, and there is more that needs repaired the deeper they get into the descent. The gates are getting in worse and worse condition. The Wraiths are less threatening here, mostly because they're confused rather than angry in this like space between worlds, but Asar warns that they're going to be like pretty bad once they get into Psyche again. And Mischa's like, why can't you help all of them? And he's like, it would draw too much attention to us as we go through the descent. It like would bring too much danger. And Mischa's like really struggling to reconcile the idea she's had of this Wraith warden, this guy that is like notorious for doing like the dirty work of the Shadowborn kingdom, with this man that she's come to know over the weeks they've spent going down this descent. She asks him about it. And Mische says, they say you could kill 1,000 men without lifting a sword. They say that you collapsed entire rebellions without anyone ever seeing your face. And Asar says, it isn't hard to kill lots of people. If you find just the right hearts to stake or leaders to compel, just the right weak point to exploit, you can kill tens of thousands with a single stroke. It is a terrible measure of greatness. I am obsessed with this quote. I think it is so good. I love this idea where he's like, it is not hard to kill a lot of people. That is a terrible measure of greatness. As soon as you say it, you're like, yeah, obviously that like makes sense. But I do think oftentimes we do measure like, even like historical figures, we like measure their like greatness with like how much death they were able to cause. And it is a terrible measure of greatness. And then Mische says, but wait, hold on. But have you killed a lot of people? That is actually like a real question. And Asar says to her, I have killed many, many people, Ilya. Yes. Does that disappoint you? I was young. I had nothing else to offer to make myself worth keeping. My father killed all his other bastards. I was 8 years old when he met me, and apparently he saw some potential to be honed. I committed myself to being very, very good at my role. And Mische immediately knows this feeling, because at 8 years old is when she was like taken to the Sun Temple and essentially given to Atraxis. She knows what it means to be like a child on an altar who has to do things in order to like earn love, because that is essentially what both of them have had to do since they were 8. And not only earn love, but like to survive. Both of them, this was not love they needed out of just like because they wanted some. It was because like otherwise they would die. And Mische says to him, a past doesn't define a future. I'd be a terrible missionary if I didn't believe that. She says, it's not a justification, but it is an explanation. And Mische is like realizing that they care about each other and remembers the Wraith's warning when the Wraith had warned them, he likes you, the spooky girlie had said, he likes you, even if he doesn't know it yet, but he will ruin you all the same. That is becoming closer to a reality she's like recognizing. And that night she dreams of Atraxis, very dimly calling, because they're pretty deep into the descent now, and so he's farther away. But he says to her, we are running out of time, Amara. Darkness looms on the horizon. You must complete your task. And Mische says to him, I will. He kissed me, a scalding promise, and I prayed he wouldn't taste the blood on my lips. Okay, end of chapter. Obsessed with that ending. I feel like this book is one of the, I'm like really enjoying the theme of this book, like the messaging, the learning that both our main characters are doing. And I don't know, I feel like Carissa's just like really cooking with this one. I feel like Carissa does such interesting, complex relationships, and she's not failed to do so in this book as well. Anyway, that's where I'm leaving things. I have started rambling. Leaving things here, halfway through. We will finish the next half next week, right before the new book comes out, so it'll be fresh in our brain. I'm so excited to get into this next part with you guys, to finish up their journey into the underworld. It's so good. We get to learn more about spooky girlie, which is so good. We spend more time with Nyaxia, which I love, and then we also get the romance. Like, the second half of this book is really where I think it like shines, and so I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. Obviously, you should subscribe so you know when that video is coming out if it isn't already, and I will see you there. Okay, have a great rest of your day. Bye.